this thing yesterday, create a REST service. So I want to make use of a postman, like a postman. We are going to use a postman, or better still, there is a Swagger integration, but you people may find it difficult now. Let's see how to add Swagger to our project and integrate Swagger. Is that fine? In Swagger, you'll be able to test this API instead of you copying it to web browser to test. You can test directly within this. So let's say Swagger integration with Spring. I have it in one of my projects, but let's follow this guy. This guy is equally good. Let's follow this guy. Anytime you see this zone.com, they are in the so when we are using Swagger is enable us to test our API, so that you test each endpoint. Each endpoint, that is, when I mean endpoint, that is a function you define on your application. Like now, this is an endpoint. This is another what? Endpoint. This is another endpoint. The name you give to it is normally what we call endpoint, but the logic is within here, right? So we want to be able to test it. We add this and Swagger UI, we add it to our project. But I don't want us to use this. We have another version, I think 2.9 or so. So the first thing is, you come to your dependency here. This is where you manage your dependency. You add that Swagger, you add that first. Then you go and copy this one again, so that we'll be able to document it. Documentation in the sense that if anybody want to talk to our server, immediately they see that documentation, they will be able to know what they want to pass and what they will get in response. Do you people understand? So I don't want to use this version. Let's change the version to, let's, instead of 6.2. I think there is 2.9.2 now. Why is this thing not auto-complete? Let me try and search it online. Let's see the version. I got it right. 2.9.2 is equally stable. And if you like, it's possible that there is no need for compile. 3.0 is even out. So I prefer to always use latest version. So let's change it to 3.0 here instead of 2.9.2. Right? This is just a dependency. Every day, whenever you want to work. So when you do this, mostly I normally say you should use Maven for your project. I mean, you should use CMD, command line, for your project. You cd to that directory. Now say nvn spring run. Let's run it, because if we run it, it will automatically install the dependency we had. And we can equally do that by right clicking on our project and click on what? Resolve. But most of the time, net being used to fail. But with a command line is like a, yeah, so it will pass through. I don't know how long it will take, but it will not take time for it to see. It's downloading all this spring for this and that. So while that is going, let's close this chapter now and focus on. You will see how we are going to document our API, and you'll be able to see there is a particular file. I'm going to copy from here. So you enable Swagger, you have to create a configuration file. I'm teaching you this. Anytime you want to work, you have to follow this protocol. So here you create a package. You have a config. This is where your configuration file will be. So you can now create a class there, call it a Swagger config. So with the Swagger config, you now come here, you copy, I can copy the entire class for now. So that with import, since that is downloading already, I don't know if this guy is done. It's not done yet. Oh, it is on. Yes. So I have to Control Shift I to import Swagger to. So this pattern, let me see. If I don't want to use this part, I just want to show you something. I don't want this pattern. I have to quickly check one of my projects. Let me pause the video. We don't want to limit it to just product. A regular expression will limit it to product. I'm going to explain that later. Just put a part selector dot any. So that is what we need. So anytime we now run our API, we'll be able to access our Swagger through the API. So let's run it again. All this configuration, once you have a project working with a particular configuration, all you need to do is most of the time you copy the project, you rename it so that you won't have to do the whole entire configuration again. So you know the URL of our project is, when you are working, is localhost port 8080. So you can ask a swagger UI.html so that it will give you the Swagger UI. Why is this not coming up? Let's see. We enable Swagger config. So. Okay, something again. So here, instead of this base package, where your controller reside, you are going to make use of that as the base what package. Let me copy and put it here. So the system will scan through uh, every classes you define under this controller. It will now make use of all their the endpoint available there. What is happening? If I try to access into API, so this V2 API docs is working. Swagger UI is not working. I believe it's because of the versions of Swagger we are using. Let me change it to 2.1.6 and see. It's possible that that Swagger 3.0 need a special configuration. All you need to do is you come here. Even 2.9.2 will work fine because I've used it in one of my previous projects. Let's see. This guy will run again. It will install the new dependency. The scope, compile. And just use version. Do not resolve this. Is it 2.9.2 we saw the other time? Can we use the version they have here? Okay, let's use this version. Let's use this version. Where is the guy? Get up. Hmm? Let me try it again. Let's wait for this guy to. So let's proceed. We've added the integrated Swagger. We are coming there so that the essence of Swagger is to test. So when you test, you can try it out. You see the response. Because yesterday we tried to, let's try and get the list of students here. Can you see it now? That is within your application, you'll be able to see it. Can we see it? So I want to do something. Are we following? Let's try and bring something here. Let's call this one private list student. So equal to new array what? List, right? We are used to this so that let me say list is equal to this. So let's save it and we will still run it. This one as load so that if we invoke this endpoint again, we should still get the same result, right? Isn't it? So now let's create a method for adding students. We now say, okay, post mapping. I can say student. This is the address, this is the endpoint. If anybody want to save student into your system, let me just use that layman language, into your application. It means that you need to give them this endpoint that save student is what. So they need that they now need to know what are they going to send. Add what? Student. You know we are adding students now. You now put something at request body. You now put the student object you have. So now Control Shift I. You see this is the post mapping. It means that I want to add new item into the system. This at request body, mark it that is going to be in the request body because where some of the item will be in the request parameter, some will be in the request body. I'm going to explain that as we proceed. So when you look at some items like this, look at this. If you search something, do you notice that maybe when you are filling a form online, you always see something like maybe one, maybe if I see gtbank.com/1, something like this. So this is like a request parameter that identify the record you are trying to access. So some parameter will be in this, some will be in request body. But any request body must always be a post request. So what we want to do is we want to add it. All we need to do now say list dot what? List dot add what? Student. I will add that student. You understand? Let me now return student. So if I want to return student, now say response entity dot okay list. I'm passing the list of students so that whenever I want to add, I will add a new student. You will now see that initially I have to reload my Swagger. Can you see it now that this is a post? So I can say try it. I can go to try it. You see, this is a JSON data I'm submitting. But you know, ordinarily you're supposed to convert that JSON. I show you how to convert the JSON, but it is automatic conversion. So this is the JSON data you are going to give to somebody working. Let's say you are working on desktop application. You understand? That anytime you want to save student, you have to send it in this format. It means that if I put lanre@gmail.com, if I put ajdelanre, if I put this, you get it. So if I now post it, can you see it? It posted it and returned this. Do you understand what we're doing? It posted it and returned. Why it returned the list of students is so because it is in this post I added what? Student. Do you get it? That's why you did not see the list of the existing students to come up.
Okay, not get.
You don't get it.
Adding.
Let's say something like this. Let's say this one is returning the list, right? Let's say I have a method public void add student. You understand? I create it into another method. I just copy. So let's say here, I will just call it. Of course, I can create constructor for it. You understand? Add student, something like this. You get the gist. Eh? This is a constructor now. A constructor with that parameter. So I just so that the student will be added to it so that automatically, even if I've not, you see what I'm saying now. By default, I move adding of a student from this list so that this list will still just return the student. You see, these are the list of students there. So if I want to add a new student, I can just come here, which lanre@gmail.com. Let's leave it like that. Let's change this department to mathematics. So if I save it, you can see that it returned true. So if I decide to add another one, let me just change this. And see that it return what? 4. You understand? But the issue is that if I restart the program, it doesn't save to database. I'm just showing you now so that you familiar yourself with this. So I'm just showing you. Let's try and do something that each record have an ID. Do you people understand what we're doing? We have a method. What the only two methods we have now is what? Get and post. Now, there is what we call API documentation. Let me tell you something. There is something, the Swagger we have, we can say at API operation. I can say value. And that will now explain what this endpoint means for adding new students. Let me say Ctrl+Shift+I. Let me go and reload. I did it on the post, right? So that you take note of what. Can you see it? Endpoint. So that if you want to implement it, you know that okay, this is what this one. So you can document any other one like that. You understand? Do you people get it? It means that this is the payload, but we have not specified the response now. Because anybody that want to implement is supposed to see response to that. If I invoke this is the response I'm going to. So you need to give the data structure of the response. In that case, you use a response is now going to be student dot what class. If your response is registration, you have to do registration dot what class. Then there is another thing again. Response controller, you make it what? A list. Because you are expecting list in return. So here, you copy the same thing for this one. Get student, right? I can say endpoint for retrieving list of what? Student. The what I'm expecting is what? Student. So the type of this student is a what? A list. If it is not a list, if it's a single student, you don't need this. All this thing doesn't change. It doesn't change except maybe variable. This is standard way of doing something that you need to follow. You are not the one that write this. I'm just showing you that this is important. So if I reload my, let's first check this. Okay, maybe this guy is still going. Okay, it's complete now. Can you see that? Endpoint for retrieving list of what? Student. This is what the return type. I will know that okay, I'm expecting array of this. So that I know that if I invoke this, I'm expecting array of this. So that you from your own program, you'll be able to create array list of, you just create this object. Is you may not call it student, you can call it login response, but make sure that you have a string, department, email, this and this, so that you know that that's for you it's going to be, it may not be in order. Just make sure that you have that. That's what you use to receive the data. So and when you add it, this is the data you are going to send. You can see that this is the body. That is, you are going to send this. Can you come down to response? Look at response. That is, when you send this, you are going to get this in what? In return. So that you create an object that will represent this. So that when you get this object, you now decide to save it into your database. I don't know if from your program or from any. This is a service that is independent of any programming language. But what you only need to understand is you understand the payload. That what payload am I expecting? What method? Is it a post method? What is the payload? And if I invoke this payload, what am I going to get in response? Those are the major things you need to ask yourself. We can put error, we can put for no fun. For now, this is what we have. We are still going to do a lot today. Yes, let's pause.